Good afternoon. It's so good to see everyone here this afternoon. Welcome. I have the privilege and honor of introducing our beloved Judy Cheney from our board. Judy, welcome. We're so glad that you came today. We're so glad to have you.
The two guys on the board are back there, Frank and Albert. But I guess they think I should be the speaker. But anyways, first of all, Sean, the young man, and the other young man, Tanveer, they were here 4 weeks ago and gave a great presentation. I know a lot of you were here then. They'll be back August 8th again. And that, just telling Claudia that August is the National Month for Wills. And our consultant that we use in the foundation had told us that like 60% of the population do not have wills, which blows me away. But anyways, I think someone else might be doing that presentation, but just so you know, look forward to coming and join us then. But again, thank you for coming. There's a couple of handouts. Hopefully you picked up this one. If you didn't, one of the boys will bring you one. This is a copy of the PowerPoint that you're going to see up here. So you can follow along, take notes, whatnot. And Zach is putting it on Touchtown, right? So everything is out there. This one here is back, if you didn't get that, they would like just a little review. How did the presentation go? Suggestions, and so on and so forth. So that's for our two young guys up here, okay? Other than that, Sean and Tanveer might say a couple of words, but again, thank you for coming. I think you're going to enjoy the presentation, and I'm pretty sure they're up for questions. You guys explain that. Okay?
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Judy. Well, thanks everyone for being here. If you came back and you were here with us about 4 weeks ago, it means we didn't bore the heck out of you, so we'll try harder this time. And if you were here last time, we met in June. I can't recall the date, but Sean shared some comedic humor that Washington was officially the worst place to die last month. As of July 1st, it's no longer officially the worst place, so we're moving on up.
What is?
I don't know what is, but our taxes just went down, and he's going to cover that. So if you're thinking about leaving for that reason, you don't have to anymore. So, Judy, thanks for the introduction. I'm Tanveer. I'm a financial advisor with Heritage Wealth. This is my colleague, Sean. We work with Heritage Wealth Advisors. We're a wealth management team based out of Mercer Island. And one of our priorities is to help the families that we work with, help have the biggest impact on their communities and their families. So today's part two. A lot of what you're going to hear today is going to be some overlap on what we shared last time. I think I shared with you all that the tax code is very, very complex. It's now over 70,000 pages. So you can't hear this stuff enough to become an expert. So we'll go through some more case studies today. We'll go through some more concepts. If you have any questions, just raise your hand. We'll get a microphone to you. We've got a lovely young helper back there. Zach will get you the mic. And then we'll make it as interactive as possible. We should have plenty of time for questions. One of the items that a lot of folks like to work with us on is how do clients and families get the most out of their financial resources? How can they maximize what ends up going to their families? How can they support the charities, organizations, causes that they believe in? And then how can they reduce what ends up going to either the state or federal government? Most people, the taxes are their highest expense or largest line item expense through their lifetime. So what steps could you take to go reduce that? So we're going to cover some of that. There's going to be a number of scenarios. Some of them do have some larger numbers, so larger amounts of estates, larger taxes. Know that we use some of those because they do a good job at illustrating the tax savings that someone could benefit from. However, with estate planning, if your net worth is over $3 million, a lot of what we're going to cover is going to apply. And even if your estate is over $1 million, a lot of these things will start to apply to you. So today we're going to get into estate planning 2.0. What we'd call 2.0 is when you're becoming tax smart and you're actively using strategies to go reduce what you're going to pay in taxes. And then as Judy mentioned, next month we'll have a legal firm that we partner with, eLegacy. They will be presenting on some of the things like what are the specific Washington state estate planning tactics and techniques to use. So things like if you need to make a will, if you need to update a trust, things of that nature. So we'll start with some of the basics, then we'll cover why estate planning makes more sense now than ever. Then we'll get into some of the advanced techniques along with the case studies, and then we'll close out with some action steps. So the most important question, and this is, again, some of these are going to be repeats to what we saw last time. One of the most important questions in estate planning is who gets what. So history's got a ton of examples of estates with no named beneficiary. So Howard Hughes had a $3.8 billion estate, no beneficiaries. You got Michael Jackson, you got Prince, $300 million and $825 million estates. And so you think there's otherwise successful individuals had no person named as a beneficiary to their estate. So maybe it's not wanting to acknowledge, hey, one day I'm going to have to part ways with this money. Who should it go to? Where should it go to? Maybe just avoiding that thought. There is a chance that whatever state you live in is going to divide up your assets the way you want, but there's a high probability that they're not going to do exactly what you want. So that's why one of the important things to square away is just having beneficiaries for your accounts, and then just having an estate. And then at the most basic level, what is an estate, right? It's simply everything that you own minus what you owe. So any retirement account that you have, any bank account that you own, things that you own, jewelry, watches, property, stocks, securities, mutual funds, ETFs, bonds, any insurance policies that have cash value to them or have a death benefit to them, and then any real estate. So if you think of what is an estate, it's everything you owe, and then less a few other items.
Yeah, so like we shared last time, estate planning is a key component of financial planning. It's about caring for loved ones and directing what happens to our wealth, assets, and our legacy after we're gone. So proactive estate planning can help reduce taxes and costs, but it's also about passing on your legacy and your values. So the saying we shared last time was wealth rarely survives 3 generations. Again, the example I think I shared was the Vanderbilts in the 20th century, one of the wealthiest families in the United States, whose fortune was ultimately spent and lost by subsequent generations. And that had nothing to do with how their money was invested, but rather the steps that the older generations didn't take to prepare their heirs who ultimately spent and inherited that money. So that's the why with estate planning, why it's important. And as Tanveer mentioned, we'll have our estate planning partner with us next time who can go over some of these terms in more detail and cover some of these topics and answer some questions as well. But that was an interesting segue Judy gave us, that 60% of Americans, that's right, that didn't have a will. So hopefully most people have taken that step. But a will ultimately provides direction. If you don't have one in place, the state may distribute assets not according to how you would want, not according to your wishes. We also refer to that as probate, the probate process. That doesn't mean that the state takes your money, but it does mean, again, that they may distribute your assets not according to your wishes. Healthcare directive and a power of attorney, those are tools to make sure that both medical and financial decisions are handled by someone you trust and based on your wishes again. And then a revocable living trust can take your estate plan a step further. So helping you avoid probate and also adding a layer of privacy to your estate. The key point is basic estate planning is about making sure your wishes are executed and not anyone else's and not the government's. So that's what we refer to as estate planning 1.0. The next piece that we shared last time is with a basic estate plan, your money can go to two places. It would be your family or the federal government. With advanced estate planning, we open up charities and charitable gifting as an additional strategy or an additional recipient for your assets. Most people default to a government-friendly plan they may gift some of their assets to their family, and then the government imposes a tax on everything else. So we'll cover some of the strategies you can use to disinherit the state and federal government and redirect more of your money to your family and charities. So while a will, trust, medical directive, documents and steps you can take, such as those, represent our basic estate planning, or what we refer to as estate planning 1.0. The question then comes, what is a tax-smart estate plan? What does estate planning 2.0 entail? And what if we want to actually reduce what goes to the IRS and give more to our family or community? What tools can we use? So this graphic is pretty busy. There's a lot of things on here, but this is what we'd refer to as estate planning 2.0. Why would someone go through the trouble to even begin to tackle some of these strategies? Again, the purpose is to reduce taxes and other costs and pass more of your wealth on to the next generation. So Tanveer shared last time the tax code, or you shared earlier, the tax code is over 70,000 pages. So although that gives us a lot of opportunity and opens up the playbook, it can be complicated. But the intent of this slide is just to show the scope of what we would cover with clients when beginning to discuss and build an estate plan. And then I shared some tangible examples last time as well. And this illustrates the value of estate planning. You'll see a couple of pretty notable individuals up here with, larger estates, but again, just meant to illustrate the concept. So you see Rockefeller, John D. Rockefeller, and Walt Disney have a very similar estate. Rockefeller paid over 60% of the value of his estate in taxes. Walt Disney took some steps in the right direction, paid over 30% less in the total value of his estate in taxes. Yeah, and then I shared the example of Kaiser last time as well. Pretty substantial estate, but again, only paid 2% of the total value of his estate in taxes. So again, the difference between these individuals isn't how much money they had, but it's, again, the proactive steps that they took during their lifetime to reduce the amount that they paid. Yeah, and again, something we wanted to emphasize was a lot of people think that this impacts just wealthy families, but those figures we share just illustrate the concept. As Tanveer mentioned, the reality is a net worth of just a few million in Washington makes estate planning and estate taxes become even more relevant. And we'll share some recent legislation and some changes that have made it increasingly relevant for more individuals and families. Yeah, so since we were here in June, the estate tax legislation has actually changed, and we shared that it was headed in that direction back in June. So prior to June of last year, that's June of 2025, Washington State had a $2.2 million exemption per person. So I grab this guy. And the highest marginal tax rate was 20%. And then Washington retroactively increased the exemption per person, and the highest marginal tax rate increased to 35%. So raising the exemption is good. That means that less of your estate is subject to tax, but they increase the highest marginal tax rate. And now this visual shows what's currently in place. The most recent announcement, as of July 1st, in between the last time we were here, the exemption that's in place now is $3 million with a top marginal tax rate of 20%. And the reason that we share all those examples is just to share how volatile the legislation can be. This can change in the future. It's changed a lot in just the recent past. So it's important to have a plan in place that helps you, stay ahead of these changes. So yeah, Tanveer will get into trusts and share the importance of a trustee. Yeah, please. Please, yeah.
Yeah, you can do them now.
I have thought that when it shows, $3 million plus or minus not subject to tax, that it was not subject to tax.
Correct.
But the way this reads, it is subject to tax starting at 0. So which is it?
So question is, this looks like the exemption is $3 million, meaning the first $3 million of your estate wouldn't get taxed. But then this bottom table shows the tax starting at 0 to $1 million. That's showing the amount over the exemption. So if your net worth was $4 million, for example, that last million or the $3 to $4 million of your estate would get taxed at 10%, so $100,000 tax. Great question. Albert?
This is an oddball question, but the people you deal with, do you think most of them know what their net worth is, or do you think most people understate their net worth or overstate their net worth?
Yeah, it's a great question. So do most people that we work with know their net worth? Do they understate it? Do they overstate it? Most people that we come across have a reasonable understanding of what their net worth is. They will have very little understanding of the taxation of their net worth. Meaning they'll say, my net worth's $5 million. I have no clue if I need to pay any taxes or not. It's not something that you actively want to think about, is how much am I going to pay to go die? Like, that's not a question most people are coming across on a regular basis. Any other questions? And I'll point out one other thing that Sean just did as well, is you'll see, this is dating back at the earliest here, 2025 to 2027, there's been a few different iterations, and that's what has been shown like the last couple years is the exemption has gone up, the estate tax rate went up, then the exemption went back down, and then the estate tax rate went back down because it was going to be extremely expensive to pass your estate down to your beneficiaries. So what comes next, we don't know. There's a high probability though, as we look 5, 10, 15 years in advance, that these numbers will be there will be a larger tax due in the future. Typically this number, this 3 million, let's use that as an example today, it will typically go up every few years. It's by inflation. So if you think inflation's going up 2.5% to 3%, then you've got investments, maybe those investments are going up 5 to 6%. Typically your estate tax is going up every single year because you're outpacing inflation. Not always the case, but that's a general rule of thumb. So by show of hands, and if anyone wants to share, does anyone have a trust, a revocable living trust or an irrevocable trust? Yeah, a few people. So you guys may have gone through picking a trustee at some point. So we'll share some of the specifics of, as you consider setting up a trust, or if you've got a trust set up, what are some of the things that you need to be giving thought to? One of those is picking a trustee. So essentially you have 3 different options. You can pick a family member to be the trustee. You can pick a friend, or you can pick a corporate trustee. And what we end up seeing is most people default to picking a friend or a family member, someone that they know, someone that they trust, someone that it's easy because it's like, hey, Sean, can you go be the trustee of my trust? Here's what I want you to do. What we have seen though, and we're seeing it more and more, is we're starting to see estates start to diminish because of taxes, legal fees, mismanagement, and just improper advice and investment on the actual trust that you have set up. So most people will gravitate, like I said, to a friend or family member because it's easy. And then a corporate trustee, that's gonna have a cost. So you might be thinking, do I wanna go pay $5,000 or $10,000, or do I wanna ask Sean to do it? Sean's gonna do it for free for me, right? But what am I giving up? So a few of the things that if you're picking a trustee, you want to be very, very mindful of is a fiduciary duty. So over the last several years, we've seen a lot of lawsuits And that's been because trustees may not be making the best decision. So I'm gonna keep picking on Sean here. If Sean's doing this as a favor to me, he's probably not spending a whole lot of time saying, what should I do for Tanveer's trust that's in his best interest? He's just doing it within the margins of the day. Maybe he's making the best decision, maybe he's not. The beneficiary of that trust could go back to Sean years later and say, I want to sue you because the market went up 100% in the last 7 years and you only went up 20%. Why didn't you make a better investment choice? So that ends up being one of the costs. The other one, and this is more so with family members, is remaining neutral. So it may be difficult to remain neutral if the trustee has a conflict of interest, AKA the trustee is a family member. They're like, okay, well, I'm about to go do this one venture. Maybe I need to set some money aside for myself. And then is that what the trust was set up to do? Maybe, maybe not, but that is a risk. And then one of the other ones I'll jump down is, I've got it in bold here, determine compensation up front. So Sean starts doing this as a favor to me. He's doing it as a friend. He's doing it for free. And then someone tries to sue him. Maybe my beneficiary does. And then Sean's like, well, I've been doing this as a favor. I've been doing it for free. Now I want compensation. If you want me to go work on it, I need compensation now. So now if you guys have had those types of discussions, typically if you have a money discussion at the front end, it's usually easier versus if you have it on the back end, that can be kind of painful. So another thing to just keep an eye out on is you're picking a trustee. So what we're seeing more and more of now is we're seeing corporate trustees. These are professionals. These are people that are doing this for a living. They go over what their duty is. They go over the amount of time they spend. They go over how much they charge. And they're not going to be having, they could still have a conflict of interest, but the likelihood that they're going to be benefiting themselves from money in your trust is very, very low. Any questions on trustees? Okay, we'll jump to an example. So we'll shift into some of the strategies of when you are gifting. What is a tax efficient way of doing that? So if anyone wanted to make a gift, let's say it's $1,000, they'd have to come up with $1,000 to make that gift. So most people would go into their checkbook, they'd write a check, they'd put the name of the organization, and the organization would receive $1,000. Now, assume that you had to make you were going to make some type of contribution and you had money in stock. If you wanted to go donate that stock, some people may end up selling that stock, they'd pay a tax on it, and then the organization that they're gifting to would receive the net proceeds. So in this example, someone gifts $50,000, they sell the stock, they pay $7,100 in tax, the charity gets a $42,860 donation, and then the person that made that gift gets a almost $16,000 tax deduction that year. So that would be one way. That'd be selling something and writing a check. The second way, and some people are aware of this, a lot of people are not, is you could donate securities directly to organizations. Most nonprofits, most charities have a way to receive the stock directly from you. So instead of selling it, you donate the entirety of the $50,000 of stock. Let's say it was Microsoft, for example. You don't pay any capital gains on it because you never sold it. The charity or organization gets $50,000. You also, as the donor, you will get a larger tax deduction, so $18,500, and that's because you made a larger donation. And the charity ends up getting over $7,000 more in this case. If someone had a deduction that they were not able to use for one reason or another, any unused deduction can get carried forward for 5 years. So the likelihood of not being able to utilize that deduction is pretty low. And I apologize for the acronyms that are going to come in the next few slides. This is part of the tax code being 70,000 pages. There's a lot of acronyms. This one's a QPERT. It's called a Qualified Personal Residence Trust. Has anyone heard of these before? Okay, we got one hand. So this is effectively when you put a primary residence or a secondary residence into a trust with the intention of gifting it to your kids, but you would remove it from your estate. So I'll share an example. So let's take two examples here. Let's say Bill and Jane, they're 70 years old, and they eventually are going to gift their house to their children. So their house is worth $1 million today. It grows for 4%. After 10 years, the house would be worth about $1.5 million. If this was included as part of their estate and they had a taxable estate that was above the $3 million for the state of Washington, the entire $1.4 million counts toward their estate, and at a 10% tax rate, they'd pay about $150,000 of tax. Their kids would inherit a net amount or a net home that's worth about $1.3 million if you include the tax in there. Now a qualified personal residence trust, so if they wanted to do a family-friendly plan, they would move their real estate into a trust. They would still continue to live in it, and they would decide how long they want to live in it. Let's say in this case, 10 years. They said, we want to live in this house for 10 years. After that, our kids are going to inherit it. Now, the house still grows at 4%. It's still worth about $1.5 million. But when they make this contribution into the trust, they get a deduction for that. That deduction is about $300,000. Then the taxable portion of their estate or their home now goes down to $700,000. And then the amount that gets taxed by the state of Washington is $70,000. So they're effectively able to accomplish something very similar. They live in the house, it goes down to their kids, they pass it down to their kids, but instead of their kids paying about $150,000 in tax, they're paying $70,000. So a lot of folks that are living in their home, they may consider this, or if they have secondary or investment properties, they may also consider this as a more effective way of passing real estate down to kids. Judy.
Yeah. You said, what would happen if you did that? You said like 10 years, but you wanted to stay in your, after 10 years passed, you were still able to stay in your home for a couple more years.
That's right. You could stay in it beyond the 10 years. There's some pretty unique rules as to what happens if, in this case, if Bill and Jane didn't outlive the 10 years, then the whole trust just becomes undone. If they live beyond the 10 years, they could still continue to live in the house. There's some extra steps that have to be taken, but that tax benefit does remain. A great question. And then, has anyone heard of qualified charitable distributions? So this is another method of gifting. There's some specifics to it. One is you can only make gifts to qualified nonprofit and charitable organizations. These gifts come directly from either a traditional IRA or a 401k. And what ends up happening is if you're subject to a required minimum distribution, let's say someone had to take an RMD from their retirement account, let's say it was $20,000, and every year you gifted, let's say $5,000 to a specific organization, instead of receiving the 20, paying tax, and then making a gift of $5,000, you could make a $5,000 gift directly from the IRA or the 401k. That does two things. One is you don't pay any tax on it when it's done as a qualified charitable distribution. The second is all the money that you give via a distribution is counted towards satisfying your minimum distribution. So then you'd only have to take out $15,000 in that example, and you would satisfy your full required minimum distribution for the year. Question?
You can only give $111,000
Correct, that's an annual limit. So
when you die.
Is there a limit?
No. No, this would be an annual limit, so
Annual, got it.
correct. So if you said my minimum distribution is only 20, I want to make a bigger gift than that, you could make a bigger gift up to 111,000. If you went above that, then some of the tax benefits start to go away. A few other gifting techniques. This is going to be applicable for those who are either actively gifting to kids or grandkids, or those who are considering gifting to kids or grandkids. A lot of the times when you think about, okay, if I'm gifting to my kids or maybe my grandkids, and my grandkids are in their teens or 20s or 30s, they may be in a different tax bracket than you. So if you were, I'll use an example, if someone was gifting $10,000 a year to their grandkids and they were selling stock to do that, you'd be paying tax on it, and then you'd give the net proceeds to your kids. You'd have $10,000 more of income every year. However, let's say you've got a grandchild and your grandchild doesn't have any earned income. They file their own tax return, but their taxable income is zero. You could gift the stock to them directly. They could sell it, and they could file a tax return, and they may potentially pay 0% tax or less than you would otherwise. So the concept is keeping track of not just your tax return, but what are the tax returns in your family that you could use? Typically, kids and grandkids are the ones that you think of and say, who is at the lowest, most preferential tax rate? Maybe we'll shift stocks or securities to them and sell it under their tax return. The other thing that we hear quite a bit is the annual gifting limit. You see it at the top line there, it's $19,000. Most people will think if they gift more than $19,000, they would have to pay some type of tax, or the beneficiary would have to pay some type of tax. That's not true. As you gift more than $19,000, the one thing that happens is you have to file a separate form when you do your taxes at the end of the year. You don't pay any extra tax, the recipient doesn't pay any extra tax, but you do have to go through the headache of filing one form. It's not super complicated or difficult. CPAs will do that all the time. What it does do, though, is it will count towards your lifetime gifting limit. So if someone gifts $20,000, for example, in a year, and that was the only gift they made over the gift limit in their lifetime, they would have used up 1,000 of the $15 million limit that they have. It's not until you surpass that lifetime limit that you have to start paying tax to pass money down. The other piece too is the IRS does allow you to bunch 5 years of gifts into a single year. And then the $19,000 is per person. So a married couple, if they were gifting to, let's say, one of their kids that was also married, they could each gift $19,000 per person without having to file any sort of return. And then if you wanted to do that for 5 years, you could go gift up to $190,000 per person without having to file any return. Any questions on gifting or the annual limits?
That one line down, to be mindful of financial aid.
That's right. Yeah, great question. So being mindful of financial aid, let's say you're gifting to a grandchild and they're going to be trying to file for some type of financial aid, or if you're gifting to a parent and they have kids that are going to be going to college, all of a sudden they may have, let's say you gave them a gift of $20,000, they now have $20,000 more of assets that might change what their financial aid, what's the right word, what they may be eligible for in financial aid. Does that answer the question, or you got to follow up?
How do you get around that?
You can't, or it's very, very difficult. You can get around it, but it becomes somewhat complex because those assets will be counted toward their estate unless they're in something like a irrevocable trust that they don't have access to. A couple more questions.
If you've been taking advantage of the gifting over an extended period of time, who keeps track of that total amount? Are you responsible for that, or does somebody at IRS have a little notebook that they're keeping track of it?
Yeah, great question. So if you go over the annual limit, there's a form that you file with your tax return that would show what your cumulative gifting has been against your lifetime limit. So that 15 million would be tracked on your taxes.
What if you stay within that 19,000?
Then you don't have to track it. Yeah. If you don't do a gift, or if you do a gift under 19,000, you don't have to keep track of it.
Well, that was my question. Do accountants know all this?
Yes, question is, do accountants know all this? Most of them, yes.
Hopefully.
And they should, hopefully. If they don't, I'd
You
call
need
a
a
new
new one.
CPA pretty quickly. Yeah.
If you give 19,000 to a grandchild, say, that's not income to them, is it? Unless it's stock and they sell it.
Correct. All right, any other questions on gifting? Yes.
Would you explain the bunch of 5 years gifts? Does that mean that a single person could give $95,000 to one recipient?
Correct. Yeah, so let's use a real life example of bunching. Maybe you've got a kid that's gonna buy a home or a grandchild that's buying a home and you wanna help them with a down payment. And 19,000 would be help, but that might not get them to the point where they could buy the home that they're looking at. So instead, you could say, I'm gonna go bunch 5 years or 4 years of deduction or of gifts. I'm gonna give them $95,000 today, and now with that $95,000, they could go buy the home or put a down payment on the home that they were looking at. If that wasn't enough, and the person you're gifting to is married, you can go gift the person they're married to another up to $95,000.
And there's no tax consequence to the recipient
No,
in that bunch?
correct. And now what that does is you bunched 5 years of deductions. It does not count towards your lifetime limit of 15 million. It does not. But now you can't make gifts to that person for the next 5 years because you did 5 years at once. Another question? Any other questions on that? All right. So jump to a few other techniques that you can use. Has anyone heard of, or familiar with 529 plans, like college savings plans? So these are commonly referred to as education accounts. A lot of people have them. They've become more and more popular over the last 20 years. What most people don't think about these as is an estate planning tool. So if you put money into a 529 account, let's say you put $1,000 in there for the benefit of some other family member, maybe it's a kid, maybe it's a grandkid, a niece, a nephew, that money that you put in has been removed from your estate. It doesn't count towards your total taxable estate. And sometimes people refer to it as a trust alternative because you can set these up with a way lower cost. You don't have to go meet with a lawyer or a CPA to get a 529 set up, and you're effectively reducing your estate tax. You also retain control of it until you give it up. So some trusts, you will put money in there once, but you can't undo that decision. You can't say, oh, I don't want to give this money to that organization, or I want it back. Once you've put money into certain types of trusts, it's done, it's set in stone. A 529, if you said one child, grandchild, niece, nephew didn't need those funds for school, you could change the beneficiary whenever you want. And let's say none of the beneficiaries that you designate end up using those funds, you could just decide to take them back and say, well, no one needed them, I'm gonna put them back into my estate. It's probably not the thing you'd wanna do, but it is possible, so you have a lot of control. If someone ends up using them for school or education purposes, it does not, you don't have to pay any taxes on it. So you don't pay taxes on it year over year. And then when you take distributions, you don't have to pay any taxes then. And then they are also eligible for accelerated gifting. So if there wasn't a reason that you wanted to gift them, maybe it's a grandchild that's in their teens, they don't need help with a house payment or anything like that, you could go put 5 years of contributions into the 529 account. Now it's effectively removed 90 plus thousand from your estate, and then it accelerates what they may have available for college planning. Another strategy, and oh, sorry, go ahead.
In that 529, is the 529, oh, sorry, is the 529 to be in your name or in the recipient's, the grandchild or?
Yeah, great question. So you are the owner of the 529, and you would have let's say a grandchild be the beneficiary of it. The beneficiary you can change as often as you want. You could say, one grandkid didn't need it, I'll pass it down to the next grandchild. This is another strategy, and this is starting to get into some of those that aren't as well known, but one of the ways that you can accelerate gifting to kids is by actually gifting via a loan. And so I'll give you an example. Let's say you've got grandkids or kids and they don't have an immediate need for any money for any specific purpose. They don't have college funding or they don't have a home that they want to buy, but you want to just accelerate getting money out of your estate and giving it to them. One of the things you could do is you can loan your kids money, and I'll get to the loan part here in a second. But let's say Bill and Jane, so the couple from the previous example, they loan their daughter $250,000, and Kelly uses that to go buy Microsoft stock. Doesn't need to buy a house. So there is a rate that has to be charged and is set by the federal government of what you need to charge as an interest rate for that loan to be, probably the correct word to use is to call it a valid loan to receive some of these tax benefits. So you have to charge a minimum. It's hovering about 4.5% to 5% right now. Several years back, if we looked at like 2018, 2019, this rate was hovering at about 2%. So it was very, very cost effective. So Kelly gets $250,000. She would have to pay her parents back $11,250 a year in interest. And then after 20 years, she would have paid her parents back $225,000 for a $250,000 loan. Now, let's say Microsoft over that same time period, it grew 10%. So Microsoft 20 years later is now worth almost $1.7 million. So the initial $250 grew to $1.68 million, less the $225 that she's got to pay her parents. Effectively, there's $1.2 million that was sheltered from taxes because she got this money as a loan from her parents, and her parents did not have to pay any taxes to pass this down to her. So Kelly could have saved, or her parents, Bill and Jane, could have saved $482,000. This is also removing all of that money from Bill and Jane's estate. So they gave Kelly $250,000 today. If they had held on to it and bought Microsoft, their estate would have an extra $1.7 million in it. That would be taxed. So what they're doing is they're kicking the can down the road, saying we're taking $250 out today, we're gonna give it to Kelly, Kelly will grow it, and then when Kelly's in our position, she can figure out what she needs to do to continue pushing the taxes down the road proactively. Now I'll come back to this last piece here, this loan payment. So if you recall, the annual gifting amount is $19,000 per person. Kelly's parents every year could say, hey Kelly, we're gonna forgive your loan. And they can forgive the loan up to $19,000 a year. So Kelly doesn't have to pay it back. So it starts off as it's a legitimate loan agreement, but every year they say, don't worry about paying us back up to $19,000. So she doesn't actually pay this $225 if her parents don't want it to, or don't want her to. Correct. The $11,000 is interest, but the interest can be forgiven each year if. Well, the interest and the principal can be forgiven. Any questions on? I know there's quite a few moving pieces on this. Okay, I told you, be aware of some acronyms. These next ones are the ones that get me every time. These are GRATs and IDGITs. So it's probably the most exciting part of what we're going to talk about today. So a GRAT is a grantor retained annuity trust, and an IDGIT is an intentionally defective grantor retained annuity trust. These are effective for estate taxes. They're not effective for remembering what they do. So like I said, the tax code, it's kind of ridiculous, right? 70,000 pages long. It's complicated, it's confusing, but it does present quite a bit of opportunity of what could you do. So the simplest way I could describe these two tools is you put money into a trust, in this case a GRAT or a IDGIT for a certain period of time. Let's use 10 years as an example. The trust pays you an interest-only payment over that course of that 10 years, and then whatever remains in that trust at the end of it would go to your kids. So the point of doing this is to get money out of your estate. So I'll share an example here. Let's say you put a loan amount or an amount of $1 million in, and you have a 2% interest rate that you're going to receive. So I put in $1 million, and I'm going to get a 2% interest rate from that every single year. So I'm going to get $20,000. Now let's say that $1 million that I put in is earning an assumed rate of return of 7%. So it's growing greater than the 2% of what I'm putting into it. At the end of the 10 years, so let's say I've been receiving this $20,000 note payment each year. However, the return I've been receiving has been a 7% return, and then you'll see that'll start off at $70,000. It'll go all the way up to $105,000. If this were the case, I have now removed $598,000 of appreciation, of growth from my estate, and now I'm sheltering that from my state taxable estate, from my federal estate, and this would go down to my kids, so effectively $240,000 less in federal estate tax, and there would also be a state estate tax that applies on top of this. Again, it's just another tool that's in the tool chest of how can you effectively get as much money down to your kids without paying taxes. Has anyone heard of donor advised funds or used those in the past? So this is one you guys, sounds like a lot of people may be familiar with. Think of this as a charitable investment account. You can make a contribution. It's a lot more simple to set up than a trust. You don't have to pay, typically you don't have to pay legal fees. You don't have to pay a CPA to do a return. You can put cash in it. You can put appreciated stock in it. And then you will get an immediate tax deduction. So let's say someone was gifting $10,000 a year, but that $10,000 a year gift wasn't giving you any sort of tax benefit, meaning you couldn't itemize your tax return and you just had to take a standard tax deduction each year. What someone could consider is say, do I want to go do the next 10 years of gifting all in one calendar year and not gift for the next 10 years? So someone makes a $100,000 donation into that in 2026, they would likely get a large deduction in 2026 for that contribution. So now you could go get a taxable benefit for the gifting that you were already going to do, except you just do it in one specific year versus 10 years. It can then reduce 60% of your adjusted gross income when you go file your taxes. And let's say the deduction was so large that you couldn't use it all in 1 year. You can move that unused deduction out 5 years. What we see this most commonly with, if someone bought a stock, let's say, I'll use Microsoft, it's been a common theme. Someone bought Microsoft for $10, $20, $30 20 years ago. Now it's worth $400. And they're like, shoot, what do I do with it? If I sell it, I got to go pay a lot of tax. You could put it into a donor advised fund and you wouldn't pay any tax on it. You could sell the Microsoft stock at that point, and you'd actually get a taxable deduction for making that contribution. And then just a show of hands, is everyone familiar with capital gains tax versus ordinary income tax? Yes, most people. So one of the terms that we use is a capital gains bypass trust. So anytime, so use the Microsoft example, anytime you sell stock that you bought at one price and you sold at another, the difference, the gain, you have to go pay taxes on. If it's over 1 year, it's preferential rates. But oftentimes what ends up happening, using the Microsoft example, maybe someone worked there, they worked there for 20, 30 years, they've accumulated all this stock, and if they were to sell it in any 1 year, they just decided, I don't want it anymore, I want to sell it at a high point, they may have to pay a lot of tax that year. A capital gains bypass trust is a way that you can bypass the taxes on that. A few of those are charitable remainder trusts, there's pooled income funds, legacy income trusts, just to name a few. And what these tools have is you make a contribution with this appreciated stock. You will get a tax deduction the year that you make that contribution. And then you could go sell all of that Microsoft stock or whatever company stock that you have without paying any sort of taxes on it. So you could take a huge position that you're like, I don't want that much risk in one company, get a tax deduction, and then you can sell it. And I'll show, I'll share an example here. So this is a $2 million Microsoft stock holding example. This example would be true if someone had 50,000 or 100,000 and they wanted to make a contribution to a charitable remainder trust. So Ben and Jen, they've got $2 million of stock. They bought it for 500,000. Let's just say one day they decided we don't want that much exposure. We want to sell 2 million of our Microsoft stock. They would sell it. They would pay about $357,000 of tax. They would have a net proceed of 1.6 million. And then assuming they pulled some income out of here, they could get out $65,000, $66,000 of income each year. They would get no tax deduction. They would get no tax savings. Now, let's say Ben and Jen had some type of charitable intent that they wanted to gift to certain charities or organizations, and they said, we don't need, or we don't want to keep all this $2 million. We want it to benefit some organizations that we support. They could instead put it into a charitable remainder trust, and they could sell it right away. And you'll notice right off the bat, they do not have to pay any taxes on that because they do it under the protection of a trust. There's zero taxes owed. So that $2 million of stock now turns into $2 million that they can invest within that trust. The next piece is trusts will typically pay an income around 5%, sometimes it's 6%, could be higher, could be 7%. In this case, just assume they're receiving a 5% income. They're now receiving $100,000 a year for the remainder of their lives from this trust. Whatever is left at the end, the remainder piece, would go to organizations that they have said that they want the beneficiaries to be. Along the ways, the year they made the contribution, they got a $722,000 tax deduction for making that gift. Now, this would meaningfully reduce taxes for them. They would have to have some other areas where they're reducing or using this tax deduction to go reduce their income. So these guys could have a tax savings of over $620,000 just from that one move. And again, you could remove a zero from here, make this $200,000. They could be saving $62,000 in taxes potentially over their lifetime. So one of the reasons why most people don't do this, why most people don't make large gifts, the number one concern that we see is, what if I gift money away that I need during my lifetime, right? What if you're like, I gifted this $2 million and Ben and Jen are like, we don't have any money left, what do we do now? You can't go undo that move. So that's typically one of the things that we see that restricts folks from gifting during their lifetime. As much as they'd like to see kids, grandkids, organizations benefit, they're just like, I don't want to take that risk. So one of the things we help with is just is doing some of the projections, making sure you're not gifting too much, and typically you accelerate gifting a little bit each year. So maybe you make some big gifts along the way, but typically as you age, as you get older every single year, you may accelerate what you end up gifting to try to get it out of your estate before you have to pass it down through your passing, and then you get subject to an estate tax. I'll pause on this. Any questions on this slide? Okay. Well, I'll just do a quick closing. I know we're at 4 o'clock, so Heritage, I told you guys a little bit about us. We host these workshops. Like I said, I know this stuff is complex. We intentionally wanted to cover a lot of the things that we covered last time again today, just to show you guys examples and to understand the concepts. We host workshops every month, typically every month, on topics like this. So if you've got any interest, you want to learn more, we've got a market update, and then we do have some year-end tax strategies and plan giving workshops coming up in October, November, and December. And then if you've gotten any questions on how does this stuff apply to me, what's the specific, should I consider it, should I not consider it, what's the impact of it? I think, Judy, you've got my contact information. Feel free to shoot me a call or an email, and we'd be happy to share our thoughts with you and connect with you. Yes, question?
So a quick promotional statement and then a question. I'll do the question first. On the QPRT, okay, the top of the sheet says the term is 10 years. So when you do that, do you have to live in the house for 10 years?
Correct.
You do. Oh, okay, great. Then the quick promotional statement is that the Hearthstone Foundation is designed and ready to accept any kinds of these contributions, including stock.
That's right.
Just wanted everybody to know that.
That's right. The foundation is set up to receive stock. So if you've got questions on that, you can shoot Sean, myself a note, and we can share almost any publicly traded stock, bond, ETF, mutual fund can be accepted. But if you've got questions, just let us know. Albert.
This is going to sound like I'm a plant, and I'm not, okay. But my wife and I have been involved with Heritage Wealth Advisors for a number of years, and they will answer the same dumb question over and over and over without making you feel dumb. And I'm really serious about that. And the number of seminars that they offer is really remarkable, and they're very educational and entertaining. So I get paid nothing for saying this, but it's just the truth.
Thank you, Albert. I can confirm he was not paid to say that. He wasn't planted. Although it sure seems like it. You've done that twice now. So yeah, thank you guys all for joining us. We'll be back in a month. In August, we'll have another gentleman with us on estate planning, and he'll go over some of the basics. Like Judy said, he's gonna say, why should you need a will? What's it gonna accomplish? How do you get a medical directive, a power of attorney, things that nature established? And if you have any questions or things that would be helpful that you've got questions on, shoot us a note and we can add those to the agenda for next time. So thank you guys.